what that is? Discipline. Selfish.
No joke. We're legitimate.
Let's fucking do this. Then do it. Do it 100%, because I'm trying to.
We recognize that we are limitless.
You gotta be a champion to become a champion, right? Winning is a habit because we create habits that lead to good execution and success.
Welcome to the Coaches Show, episode 6. I'm Mike Bianca, and with me as always is Ryan Gray. On today's episode, we hear from European correspondent Clint Moore on some of the European NXL team news. Vince from Let's Talk Paintball will share some of the big moves that are happening in the NXL in the U.S., and our guests tonight are Rich Telford and Dan Lee of New York Xtreme. We'll get a look inside at how this two-man operation divides their roles and responsibilities and prepares for events, and what changed from 2022 to 2023 with one of the hottest teams in professional paintball. So, Ryan, I'm ready for tonight. How about you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've been looking forward to doing this one. We worked out quite a few times last year with Rich and Dan and the NYX crew, and they have a well-oiled machine. So I'm excited to get to talk to them about what their preparation looks like, how they divide their kind of roles and responsibilities. There's only a couple of two-man operations in paintball. So I think it'll be good for young coaches to kind of see how that process works, and it might be a good setup for others.
Absolutely, bouncing that stuff off each other. It's going to be very interesting to get that inside look on how Rich and Dan, how that dynamic works.
Yeah. Well, let's bring Clint in and get some news on NXL Europe. Clint, how are you?
Good. Yourselves?
Doing well.
Good. So where do we start? It's been quite quiet over in Europe at the moment, but it's starting to move. It's always quiet this side of Christmas. I spoke to Fabrice Colombo, aka Tav from Tauntauns this morning. They're all set going into 2024. They're not making any changes moving forward from World Cup. They're looking really solid going for next year, and they're going to be one of the favourites again for Europe winning the series, I feel.
Now, they did make a move right before World Cup, though, right?
Yeah, so they picked up Hugo from Carnage. He was one of Carnage's best players. And Hugo played on the Snake side with Axel as the number one. And he's only young. I think he's about 18. And I feel that kid in the future is going to he'll be the next Axel and can compete anywhere in the world, I feel. So fingers crossed he has a good season next year with Tauntauns. I'm expecting good things from that kid.
Yeah, it's a good thing they brought him in too, because they were really struggling through the season to really put wins together. So it's nice that they made a move to get even deeper. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. The Tauntauns were just incredibly dominant, and came to America and did really well. So yeah, when he played at World Cup, you couldn't really tell the difference whether it was him or Axel playing. So he certainly stepped in when called upon and played very well.
Them two, I guess they've trained a lot together because they look like the same person. If you put a blue beanie on Hugo, you wouldn't have a clue who's who. But he's a good kid.
Yeah, good news.
So yeah, that's the Tauntauns. Carnage. I've lost 2 key players so far. So obviously they've lost Hugo to Tauntauns, but they've lost Geiger to Scalp. And they were their 2 best players. So Carnage finished 4 for the season. And it doesn't look like they've got any strong pickups at the moment. They've picked up Max Gordin, Axel's brother. He's going to be playing on Carnage. But they're keeping things quite quiet, close to their chest at the moment. So doesn't look like they've got any big names coming in, and they've lost 2. So fingers crossed they can find someone to replace Hugo and Geiger.
And that's interesting too, because Scalp is the newest professional team coming in, right?
Yeah. So Scalp They were pretty dominant in the SPL Div 1 last season. They're coming in and they've obviously picked up Geiger, and there's a good chance Malloy will be playing for them again next season. Now, I've spoken to the coach of Scalp, and there is sponsorship conflict going on at the moment with Malloy.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a lot of rumours going on with Malloy on what team he's going to be on next year in the USA. And so Scalp are trying to work out a deal at the moment. Sponsors are saying no, that, Dye have said no, he can't shoot Planet. Lux. Lux have said no, he can't shoot Dye. So there's deep discussions going on there at the moment. But they're looking strong because they've got Geiger. They've got Pizon, who played, I think he was on Carnage a couple of years ago. Very strong player, very experienced. And I feel they'll be mid-table next season. I don't think there's going to be an easy win coming from Scalp.
Now, didn't Scalp almost played the spoiler at World Cup in semi-pro, correct?
Yes, I think they finished fourth or fifth. Was it? Yeah, they did well, and it wasn't their strong team either. So they've got a good squad. They've got a good second team, feeder team. The coach works extremely hard. I've got good things to come from there.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just pulling up here to see where they finished at World Cup.
Was it sixth?
Third.
See, I thought it was, I thought it was top four for sure. So, because I know they gave Fit and Blastcamp a run. So,
yeah. They do things the right way. They get together. They train together. They work out together. They eat together. And they're also friends as well. So, they go and do warm-ups in the morning. We saw them out in Orlando at 10 o'clock, and they're all doing like a team warm-up and stretch. And they wasn't even playing that day. So they work extremely hard as a team on and off the field. So I think they'll do well in the pro division in Europe. And then we've got kind of just moving on to some of the UK teams. London Attrition have been busy. They've let 3 players go, and they've picked up 4 players. And the players coming back is Jason Wheeler and Jake Wheeler. So they had a year away from the team, and then they've come back this year for next season. They picked up Alan Maker, who's been around a long time in the UK, real nice guy. Full of experience. And then they've picked up Brandon Rittinghouse, who is an American who had some affiliation to do with Damage and Aftermath, by all accounts, who's moved to the UK now and will be playing on London Attrition for the 2024 season. So they had a tough season this year, finishing 16th with an 8th, 13th and a 12th. So they've made big changes to try and improve for next year.
And Jason also comes from, he left another team in Europe, right, to make that move?
Yes, so Jason left Gladiatoria, who they finished 10th.
On the Italian team.
They had a pretty solid, they had a pretty good last event with a 7th, but they were 12th, 10th and 7th and finished 10th overall. But yeah, I think it's easier for him because I think he's a policeman now. So it's easier for him to get off of work and stuff when he's training and playing in the UK rather than going abroad. I don't know what Jason's doing next year with playing in America because he played Div 1, didn't he? Or semi-pro, sorry.
He played semi-pro with Manawatu.
Yeah, with Jake as well. They're looking good. You got Manchester Firm. They're doing lots of tryouts. I think they're going for a second round of tryouts at the start of the year. They're looking for a coach. Obviously, Lucky 15s. They're not looking to add to their squad, but they're looking hard for a coach. They need a coach for next season, and I know they've been talking to a few people regarding that, but I'll leave that for now. And then they'll bring in a player from the Mustangs, their second team, as and when, if needed. So they're looking good for next year. What else have we got?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of forgetting you leaving the Lucky 15s. I mean, that's a relatively big loss.
Yeah, some may say so, and some may not. Yeah, it was my time to leave the team, and I discussed with the owner Ainsley pretty much at the start of last season that this season would be my last with him. So they knew it was coming, so it was going to be no shock. And then Jim come back to the team, Jim McGowan, to play, and there was a bit of a transition and kind of passing over the reins to him for this year, and kind of working with him with the new player, with the players. As for next year, we'll see what's going to happen. Yeah, I'm not going to say much more than that.
Are we talking about American paintball for Clint Moore?
I would love to, but we'll see. You know, I've put the feelers out to a few teams, and there's some conversations going on there at the moment. But that's also going to dictate what happens in Europe because of this rule of you can only have one American pro. But that also means that if a European plays on an American pro team, he's classed as that pro player. Right. So I know there's a few owners who are trying to talk to Tom at the moment about possible rule change, where the European players can go to America, but it doesn't count as their American pro back in Europe. Does that make sense? And I feel that Tom maybe should listen to that request a little bit, because I feel that it is going to hold back some young talent. Say Tonton's example, say you have Axel and Hugo who've got the opportunity to play in America. Only one of them can, or they can't play on Tontons. So, right. You know, and it's not like they're bringing in, say, Marcelo or Goldman. It's a European players going to America and progressing as a player and learning from ideally some of the best players in the world. So I know there's a couple of owners trying to talk to Tom and see if they could get a rule change on that, which then possibly would allow more Europeans to come to play in America, which I feel that they're good enough to do.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be weird? What stops then a Tauntauns from just bringing their entire team over, playing semi-pro, winning the pro spot, and then having a team in America and having a team in Europe? And if they can, then why can't we?
I'm all up for the American pros playing in Europe, because I love playing against the best players in the world. But this is something I feel that Tom's trying to do to bring European paintball up a notch or two. But bringing European paintball up a notch or two, surely having more players from Europe playing in America would help. And then they go back and they're helping their team, their domestic team. Just for example, just say James Green from Lucky 15s gets the opportunity to go and play in America, and say Coffee does as well. It's like, well, you're going to restrict one of those players from going because they can't then play on 15s.
My point is, if you're going to, and I think this is great, just to be clear, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'd love it if we could get more international players into America, that they could play and that the rule would allow for it. The big holes I can see are what happens at World Cup, which team do you participate with? And then also, can they play, can multiple players come over and play for the same team? Which I think the answer should be no.
Yeah. I think there's a big discussion there, isn't there? And I think there's pros and cons for both sides of the argument. But yeah, that's a chat for a later time, I reckon, on that one.
Yeah, and I'm totally above my pay grade.
Right. You both have summed it up very well, but I concur, Ryan, with you 100%. And Clint, I do like what your thought process is about bringing Europe up, but I think Europe's already getting there. I think they're very, very close already as is. I do think there's a coaching opportunity there in Europe, certainly.
Oh, definitely.
Which can be leveraged by some of the pro players that have played in America and European players, bring that back. I think, Ryan, you had a great conversation with another show where you talked about that at length, and it's very insightful. So if you get a chance, we need to maybe throw a comment to that. I actually have some European information, and that is Nick Ripple of the New Orleans Hurricanes will not be playing with Breakout Spa this season in Europe.
So I did know that as well, but I was not going to. But there's more to that story, I feel, which
There
I know
is.
you know about. So, but that's for later.
That's for Nick and Nick to talk about. So.
Yeah, which
and it's nothing nefarious or bad.
No. But that's a massive loss for Breakout. And
Agreed.
Breakout finished fifth last season. And I know they tried to get Geiger from Carnage, who is now on Scalp. He was their number one target, which they lost out on. So pretty much every season they'll bring an American pro in. And obviously they've got SK as their coach. But I feel they need a little bit more depth to progress on a fifth place. Because you've got Joy up there, you've got Verst up there, and you've got Tauntauns. I think Carnage will drop down to mid-table, but Breakout definitely need to strengthen, I feel, to get another win.
Yeah, Carnage was impressive last year. I'm sad they're dropping a few players, but that is kind of the way this deal works. A team comes in and does something unexpected. It's normally one or two guys that were the difference makers, and you hope that they stay together. But the reality is that just unfortunately doesn't happen. They're going to get picked by usually the top teams. To see Scalp coming in and kind of doing some of the things that they're doing I love it, right? Because I love parity in sports. But it does have a tendency, they'll probably come in and make a wave next year, and then maybe a few of their players get picked away. We'll see.
Yeah. So what? One thing I couldn't find any information on was the Raiders. I don't know if they're going to be playing in Europe next year because of obviously the buyout, is it, which has gone on in America?
The team that Todd Adamson just purchased.
Yes.
CP Raiders.
So I don't know if they'll be coming to Europe. I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one. And they finished 12th. They are.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Okay.
We purchased them to compete in Europe.
Okay, fantastic.
Because the spot's only good in Europe, right? So he bought the spot, understanding we're gonna participate over there.
Oh, that's good. Outrage have been quiet. Droogs have been quiet. Also have been very quiet. Section have been super quiet. Obviously, Paris and Camp Venom, they got relegated, so they're down. One Halt Dynamite sitting at 9th were pretty good. FSU, don't know what's going to happen there in Europe. Are they any news on that?
Only rumor. It'll be a different set of guys. Of course, Markey and Diego will still be there. Possibly Ryan Hoskinson, but that, Todd is one of his best friends and also the coach of the Killers. So Ryan, will have a decision to make there based on whether or not Ryan decides to go pro here in America, and then what that rule change may look like. And then, kind of which one makes the most sense for Ryan, whether or not it's, I forget the Aftermath kid's name that played with Raiders last year.
Is it Steven?
Steven. Yep.
Yeah.
Is it, say his last, do you remember his last name? Yep. So anyway, Steven, it'll kind of depend on whether or not Steven is going to continue to be in the roster. I'm going to feel
terrible if he watches this. He's going to be mad at me. So,
yeah.
And then I spoke to, just one last thing is Verst. Pasternak. It was advertised that he had was leaving Verst. He hasn't left Verst, and he will be playing for them for 2024, and that's come from him personally. He's just looking for an American team to play in the NXL. So from what he has told me this morning, he is still on Verst for 2024.
I didn't see anything that said he was leaving.
I didn't either. I thought he was looking as a free agent just for America. That would be a big
Okay.
motivator, I think.
See, I think a lot of people in Europe saw that that he's a free agent and just kind of put 2 to 2 together, and maybe then got 5, thinking that he's left first. But yeah, he's just want to put that one out there. He hasn't.
He would add an incredible element to any American team, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I've heard that he's looking. He's in talks with a team at the moment, and I think they're top 10 at the moment in the NXL. So that's all I could dig out of him at the moment. So we'll see where that one goes, and good luck to him, because he's a great player. You're smirking.
Mike
knows something.
I think that Maciek is a fantastic player.
Yes.
That's all I'll say for now.
Same. That's all I'll say.
I'll say the same. Okay, and that's pretty much all I've got at the moment in Europe. Like I said, it's pretty quiet over here. It's cold, it's wet, and then things normally really get going end of January, start of February.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Clint, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. We appreciate you, and we're excited to get you on the show more often. Try to get maybe a bi-weekly update. We'll kind of talk more about how that can work. And then obviously, as we get through the first event here in America and things begin to ramp up as the NXL Europe launches, we'll be excited to get you on a little more often and discuss what's going on, because you guys get the layout for 4 weekends.
Yes.
So you'll be able to have a lot more kind of boots on the ground information about what teams are doing and who's working out and who they're working out with. And at that point, it'll be easy to see changes to the rosters and those kind of things. As far as Major League Paintball is concerned, from my understanding over there, is there's a lot of emphasis being put into Europe this year. So really excited to see kind of what they do and how that's going to work. They've discussed with Mike and I about doing some coaches clinics over there, and
brilliant.
And so we're really excited to help. And we get a lot of messages from players and coaches over there, liking what we're doing and requesting more information. And of course, we'll do everything we can to get that. So we're excited to see what happens over there.
I will keep you guys up to date.
All right. Thank you, buddy.
Brilliant. Take care. All the best.
All right. Well, let's bring Vince on and hear some news from the U.S. Vince!
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Welcome.
Yeah, it's appreciate you guys having me on. It's been a crazy week so far. I think the last time we talked, I said it was going to slow down and then pick back up and slow down, and that's kind of what happened. We had nothing there for a little bit, and then all of a sudden, everything's picking back up. So I got a couple things to talk about. I'll start off with just kind of lumping some things together. So one thing that is going to be breaking for your guys' show, no one knows about this yet. So the ML Kings, I put a rumor out there, they have sold to a partnership, and they will actually be rebranding and changing their name from ML Kings to the Miami Kings. So as of right now, Charlie will maintain control with another partner, and then it looks like maybe he'll be phasing out at the 2025. But for 2024, they are going to be known as the Miami Kings. And then their first kind of signing is Harris Hussein. They signed him. He played with Legion at the beginning of last year and then went to Notorious. Ryan, you had some experience with him there on Notorious. So they are going to be changing their name, and they are already signed Harris Hussein. So any comments on that before I move to the next couple things?
Who's the buyer?
So as of right now, it is an undisclosed partner. Okay. I'm trying to get that information, but they have confirmed with me that they have for sure sold to a partnership.
That's great. I mean, I'm happy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
That's okay. I was just going to say, I'm happy Harris ended up in a good place.
Yeah.
I was simply going to ask if there's any information or any further about the current roster of the ML Kings, now the Miami Kings. Everyone returning back, and we're adding Harris, or we have some exits.
Yeah. So it sounds like they are stripping down their roster to a core 8. Harris will be a part of that 8. And then they're also going to hold tryouts in January, maybe pick up 1 or 2 bodies, but they have not released, much like many teams so far, have not released what their roster is going to look like. I think for several teams, in which a couple we're going to talk about here next, the roster is still kind of in that limbo situation with free agency still going on. So kind of moving on to 2 things that are very related. So earlier in the week, Blast Camp purchased NRG Elite's pro spot. So Blast Camp, who took second all year last year in semi-pro, will be moving up into pro. And it wasn't the end for NRG, though. So there was kind of some rumors in the back end, things going on, and we got confirmed with Mike from the Bears and Al from NRG Elite. Those 2 organizations are merging. So essentially, NRG is still going to be around. They're just going to be with the Brooklyn Bears organization. And I talked to Al for about 30 minutes on the phone, and he had said that the jerseys are going to be the Brooklyn Bears, and then they're going to have a little powered by NRG Elite on them. So yeah, it's a good thing. We get a hungry semi-pro team in pro. Talking with Virgil and the team over there, they're going to keep a core, their Blast Camp guys, not really looking to change too much there as far as players. And then the NRG Bears side, it sounds like they're going to keep a couple guys from the Bears. They're going to keep a couple guys from Elite and merge them together. So that's kind of all the big kind of news going on right now. ML Kings, Blast Camp, Bears, NRG, whole bunch of stuff going on.
Yeah, the Bears thing is weird with, Frank, he's gone. Chris Caputo leaves, goes back to his former semi-pro team, Leverage. And from what the rumblings, of course, and I know we don't talk much about this because we don't like to talk about conjecture, but from what I understand, there's only 2 NRG guys going to the Bears, which are the brothers.
Yeah, potentially 3. So the 2 brothers for sure. I think they're looking to keep another player from last year that played with them for a little bit. So there looks like maybe 3 players. It sounds like maybe 5 players from the Bears, 3 players from NRG. Danny Del Signor, he played with A-Team in 2022. He was brought into the NRG camp in 2023. He had to step away for a little bit, and it sounds like he's stepping back in, potentially going to bring him back as well as a part of that 3 for the NRG merger.
Cool.
All right.
So I know both of you, right, have experience with Blast Camp, either scrimmaging against them or seeing them. Obviously, Ryan, you guys played a whole season against them. What are your thoughts on Blast Camp coming in as a new pro team?
I'm really excited for them, right? I think they've worked really hard. You watch all the chaos online, people talking about earning and buying and those kind of things. I do think Blast Camp is right there. They had a season where they finished 4th place. They had another season where they finished 4th place, and then they finished 2nd last year, losing literally to only 1 team the entire season. The only match that team lost the entire season was to Paintball Fit. They didn't lose another game to anyone else. So I do think they're close. The reality of the pro division, though, is it's gnarly. So I wish them the best, but I hope they didn't just lease a pro spot for a year.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
I think they've got the tools to compete. They definitely have the tools as well as what I would call the formula. The question is, will that level of tools and level of formula work in the pro division? So it's going to be interesting. I like Ryan. I'm happy for them. It's unheard of. It's unprecedented that Paintball Fit won all 5 events and Blast Camp got second all 5. It's just absolutely unprecedented. And so it's exciting to see. It's almost as if, I think it was Colt who said, we both were too big for semi-pro. And
yeah,
based off that, proof's in the pudding. So I'm not arguing with that statement yet.
Yeah. I mean, for my perspective out as just from the media side of things and as, fan side of things, I know in the background, a lot of those blast camp guys have gotten pro offers throughout the year, last year and the year prior. So, and they have a ton of talent on that team that they practice with as well in that area. Ronnie Dizon's very close to that. Zach Patience very close to them. A couple other top pros are close to that area and practice with them on a constant basis. So they are getting those pro practices experience. They are having those things. And when I look at them, yes, those are the two teams for sure to me that stick out the most in semi-pro. Is like, okay, maybe these guys can hang a little bit. I would like to get your guys' comments though. If you look at, at Blast Camp and you look at maybe the bottom 5 pro teams, do you think that Blast Camp can compete with those bottom 5? And the reason I focus on those bottom 5 is a lot of times, like you guys said, you hope they're not leasing a spot and then get bumped back down. Do you think that they can, kind of hang with that bottom 5 of that pro bracket to maybe save themselves and not get relegated?
No. I think that they can compete with the bottom 3.
Oh, I like it.
Right now, I think they can compete with the bottom 3. Again, I'm glad they made the move because they would have had zero growth in semi-pro this year as it relates to just, continuing to develop and build their team. They wouldn't have seen a team that even challenged them till deep on Sunday. So they would have wasted, 5 to 6 matches of literally just beating teams up. Whereas now coming into the pro division, they're going to get all they can handle. And again, Uprising as the 16, Uprising is number 16. So you have Uprising, the Bears, Notorious, Ironmen, and Paintball Fit. We already know they can't battle with Paintball Fit. So Ironmen, we'll see, right? They're making a lot of changes.
Yep.
Notorious, again, we'll see. The Bears, maybe. Seattle Uprising, they didn't have a great year, but Seattle Uprising is in every single match they play. Right. They're competitive with everybody. They lose at the wrong time. They make mistakes at the wrong time. Right. And I know that means you're just, you are where you're supposed to be. You're not very good, but the reality is Uprising is a pretty good team, and I'm hopeful they'll get it together this year because I do think that they have some opportunity in front of them. The Bears are a question mark. The Ironman, total question mark. And Notorious, kind of a question mark. They have a new coach coming in. They've lost some guys, but I'm sure Mark will fill some guys in. So who knows what they'll look like coming out in 2024. But I think Notorious, the Ironmen, maybe the Bears, they can compete with. But again, Paintball Fit's the 20th place team, and they can't beat them. So
it'll be definitely an interesting year, and that's why I love this show. I love the perspectives of all the coaches. I know you have some more coaches getting ready to come in as well. So those are all the updates I have. Again, if you all miss anything, Let's Talk Paintball, I kind of have everything coming up. If you don't get it here on Tuesday, you can get it on Let's Talk Paintball any other day. So thank you so much.
Go get all the rumors and clickbait.
All of it
on
Let's Talk Paintball. Have a good night, fellas.
Love what you do, Kyle. Talk soon.
Thank you.
Yeah. By the way, excellent analysis there, Ryan. Well done.
Well, I since that happened, I've kind of been looking at the league and kind of where I thought maybe Blast Camp will fit, and I can't wait to bring Dan and Rich in because we can talk a little more about these things before we jump into NYX. And talking about NYX, a team that goes, that has the season that they have, constantly being in Ocho finals matches. Ocho, well, constantly in the Ocho. Go ahead.
What you're going to say for this season?
Yeah.
This season was constantly quarters, and once the
quarters. So constantly being at the top, right? And from a season where they're, fear of relegation, they make a couple of changes to the roster, bring in Dan, right, which we're going to talk about. It's really exciting to see the season that they've had. So let's bring them in. Let's talk first maybe a little bit about Blast Camp and Paintball Fit, and then we will jump right into NYX.
Welcome, gentlemen.
What's up, boys?
How are
Hi,
things
guys.
on the left
Hey,
coast?
how's it going? Cold. Cold.
It doesn't get cold
It's
there.
cold. Just
Doesn't
cold.
get cold there. Lies.
I think it was like 60 degrees this morning.
Yeah, but it was a
wow.
cold 60 degrees.
That's
Breeze.
miserable.
It was 26
Not
degrees
easy.
here.
Yeah.
26.
He's in Southern California. I'm in Northern California, so it was 30 degrees here this morning, but 60
that's
in the
cold.
afternoon.
Yeah, that's cold.
Yeah, I
Yeah, it
didn't
was
think
50 here.
California ever saw anything beneath 40.
Yeah, no, we do up there. Right, congrats on the new job, man. That's a good gig.
Thank you, buddy. Yeah, pretty excited to be back with Mark and the boys and see what we can do.
Yeah, should be good. I'm happy to see. Excited kind of to see what you do with the program.
Well, let's talk about a couple of things Vince mentioned there. So first, Rich, I'll ask this one to you. So what do you think about the Bears NRG kind of intermingling there? And how do you think that's going to impact, the teams and then the league overall?
Well, I think you had two programs that were kind of struggling and not having kind of the success they wanted or going the direction they wanted. And when you combine those two struggling programs, you're probably going to have one struggling program.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's going to be a tough season for a lot of those teams in the kind of bottom half of the division.
Yeah, Dan.
I think having to go through the 4 stages of team development all over again with 3 new people and, like Rich was saying, 2 different organizations. I mean, it sucks to go through forming and storming for another season to even get to norming. So
yeah,
see how that goes.
Yeah,
It's an excellent point. It's an excellent point. You're merging 2 cultures essentially, or you're trying to get those 3 to adopt the new culture. So
the one culture.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a tough.
And if that doesn't happen, then it's over.
Yeah.
So what about Blast Camp? How do we feel about that?
I feel like I was 100% against them coming into the league, just because I think they're going to get smashed, and I think it's easier and cheaper to learn in the semi-pro. But then you made a valid point. Like, if there's no competition in the semi-pro, are you actually going to grow and learn? So maybe it makes sense for them to step up and swing for it. That's, best out of the 2 scenarios.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let me ask you this, because I remember, the Hurricanes were going to get smashed when we came to the pro division. And I only say that because, I've been around the Blast Camp, team, and they seem to have the right, like I was saying earlier, they seem to have the right formula. They seem to have the right idea with the things that you see happening in the pro division, right? With some of the moves that are still yet to be announced. Do you think there's going to be that parity? Maybe there's that opportunity. Maybe there's that disciplined motivation that everyone's looking at us to fail and we'll be damned if we're gonna, that kind of thing.
That's possible, but honestly, you guys are kind of the exception to the rule, right? Most people that do what you do failed, right? Like, if we go back and look at all the teams that kind of come up, they usually do, like Paintball, for instance. They don't usually do exceptionally well. They struggle and they kind of fall apart, or they go back down. So I think it's fair to say that they're probably going to struggle a little bit.
I'd also like to add that, Mike, the year you guys won it, that was maybe the grindiest semi-pro year that we've seen in a really long time. You had 4 teams going into World Cup, all with an opportunity to win that spot. Like, you guys went to war every event, right? It wasn't like you're
sharp.
Yeah, you weren't going to have to wait till the last game in the tournament to be really challenged. Like, that year of semi-pro was brutal.
Yes,
so
that's a good point. That is a good point. And I agree with you. I don't think if Blast Camp had stayed in semi-pro, I don't think there was going to be much difficulty for them. And your comment about growth is spot on.
All right, let's talk about NYX. First of all, congratulations. You guys had a pretty fantastic year. I know it didn't finish the way you'd anticipated.
Yeah. Tell me about
it. yeah, Dan, tell them about it.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I was referring to Hurricanes kind of not ending the same way. Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, so you finished 6th overall with a 4th place finish, a 5th place finish, a 5th place finish, a 7th place finish, and then 13th. Now,
13th
previous year, for sure, previous year you finished 14th place, 17th, 12th, 19th, 10th, 9th, and 11th, right?
Yeah.
So a significant improvement year over year, right? I assume you're happy with the growth, obviously not happy with the way it finished, but what changed from 2022 to 2023 that made the difference?
I think a lot of things, and Dan, obviously you can chime in anytime you want, but I think a lot of things made a big difference. One of the big things that contributed was Harris leaving the team. And not that Harris was a problem for the team, but Harris was an excuse for the team, right? Like if Harris didn't do something, then you could always have your excuse why you didn't do something. So it's hard to get the whole team to buy into a program when someone's not buying in, right? So with him leaving, they didn't have Harris as an excuse anymore. And basically kind of all the guys bought into the same program. So for the first time, we were all kind of pushing in the same direction. So that was one of the big things. Dan coming in was another big part of it. Danny, what do you think?
Like I've always been saying, like the difference between like a 89, 90% buy-in and 100% buy-in from the team makes all the difference in the world. As Rich was saying, it wasn't necessarily just the Harris, or Harris being on the team. Individual accountability went way up as a result of people not having an excuse anymore. So accountability was a huge culture change and shift in this year's iteration of NYX.
Now, how much of that shift, though, was the departure of Harris and you, Dan, and you, Rich, coming in and saying, this is what has to happen. This is the new culture. We're putting our foot down. This is how things have to be now.
Well,
how much of that was you actually taking the oar, right? Because we took that one oar, threw it out of the boat, and now you've got the rudder. How much of it?
Yeah, two things happened. One thing happened is so the vibe on the team has always been good, but the vibe on the team has always been kind of like, we want to win, but it's not as important as, having a good time and doing all the other things, right? And we found ourselves in 20th place. And then so for Dan and I, the perspective became a little different, right? Like now we can't just take it easy and joke around and have fun. We've got to you guys have got to buy into the system or we're going to fail. And that kind of highlighted some of the guys that weren't buying into the system at the end of the two seasons before. And then that really helped us get on track at the beginning of this season with everybody being on the same page.
Yeah, there's a huge difference that we can tell from the January 21st practice we had last year at ASG when we had us, Dynasty, Aftermath, and Ironman out there. We knew from day one just the amount that we got accomplished in one day was so much more than it took than we did in like two practices like the year before. And so it almost like you can feel everyone kind of shift in the same direction. And then it became super evident in Orlando. We stayed out there for 2 weeks. In personal accountability, Pat Kraft started getting people in and everyone started running 1.5 miles in the morning as a team around the blocks in that HOA that we were staying at. And that was new because that's something we never would have done the year before, but people started taking a leadership role on the team because they didn't have that distraction anymore and was able to have the space to grow.
Yeah. Sounds like it became very intentional.
Yeah, I mean, we honestly throw almost too much at the guys. We've been working really, really hard, really, really diligently. Danny and I talk 3 or 4 times a week, and I feel kind of bad for the guys because we have grown a lot this season, but we throw so much at them. It's like every single practice is building a whole new team and building a whole new goal and kind of getting everybody focused again. So they're really probably enjoying this off season.
That's good. That's why you're here, right? Do the work.
Yep. Yeah. If you do the work and then you fail, at least you know you did the work, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of the concept that a lot of successful teams see, and that is, okay, we lost. Why? It's no longer, well, it's his fault. You know, there's no more finger pointing. Hey, we lost as a team. We're going to win as a team. We're going to learn as a team. We're going to get better as a team. And I think NYX has really showed this incredible growth, because if you look at the history of NYX, right, I believe they joined the pro ranks in 2018. 2018, right. First season, 12th place, followed by 2 13th places in a row in 19 and 20, and then 2 14th places in a row, 21, 22. So we were moving in the wrong direction, and everyone said, hold up. Right. Right. You got to be consistent. See, but that's finding the positive in something, right?
Yeah.
But then turning around and making such an incredible adjustment is fantastic. I do want to talk about the season a little bit, and I want to turn Ryan loose, because Ryan's got some questions as well as I do about you and Dan's dynamic. And
let's go, baby.
I want to talk about the season. Event 1, you lost to the event winner, Dynasty, by 1. Event 2, you lost to Heat in the quarters by 1. Event 3, you lost to X Factor in the quarters by 1. I'm noticing a trend here. Event 4, you lost to X Factor again by 1 in the quarters. You win the 7-3 exhibition right before Cup, right? Get that $8,000 influx of revenue there. And then you go 2-2 at Cup, losing to Revo and Aftermath. And that's just as surprising as it was to me that the Hurricanes sucked it up at Cup. I was very surprised to see that type of performance by NYX. Wait, I missed that. What?
I said, I feel like you're just trying to be hurtful at this point.
Oh, no. Listen, if I want to be hurtful, see, you guys finished out of the 20s. Okay. That's where the Hurricanes ended up. So I can't hurt. I can't hurt you any more than I've already punched myself in the face. That being said, what happened? What do you think happened there after such a great performance in the exhibition on the layout, and then to come in? Was it just that Revo and Aftermath were just in a different gear now? It's World Cup, or was
I feel like Aftermath and Revo were playing better than they have been playing, but I also feel like we underperformed, and it's possible the guys emotionally gave all they had in the 7-3 match. Obviously, that doesn't make sense. But we don't have a ton of veterans on our team, right? We don't have anybody like Corey's won a tournament before. Silos has won a tournament before, but the rest of the guys have never even been in a finals match before. So every time we get to Sunday, it's like a brand new experience, and the guys have to go through the emotional highs and lows of getting there and either performing or not, or underperforming, and then having to kind of deal with those consequences. And I think one of the things that helps us is the great vibe that we have on the team, and all the guys really pulling for each other. But we don't have a lot of old veterans on the team, right? We don't have those kind of salty guys that have kind of been there, done it before, and they can kind of help guys figure some of that stuff out, just kind of like hard-nosed their way through it. So the guys are, they're learning the lessons they have to learn, and it's not easy, man. Like, it's a very passionate group of guys. They're the nicest guys I've ever coached in my life. Really, really talented and super, super passionate. But just wanting it isn't enough. Like, you got to want it. You got to go through all the actions, and then you have to have some luck too. So we're hoping that next season we can kind of put all three of those things together.
Right.
Yeah,
I like all your guys too. I spent a lot of time with them in the VIP area. I like hanging out with those guys.
Yeah, they're good. They're a good group of, and honestly, Harris fit right in when he was with us. But like, they're a really, really good group of guys. They're funny. They're easygoing. They're not cocky. They're not arrogant. If anything, they're super, super humble. And they're kind of a pleasure to coach when they're doing what we ask them to do.
Yeah,
I understand.
I mean, and from a technical standpoint, I mean, if we don't lose a 4v2 with a minute left and just throw our bodies away, and Grayson Gladstone goes down, shoots 3 dudes, or we don't go to overtime in the Aftermath game and in the Revo game, if we knew that we were up 5v4 in the overtime, or we shouldn't have even gave back 2 points we're up 2-0. But
or on the opposite spectrum. On the opposite spectrum, the quarters in Sunshine State, you shoot 2 of my guys on the break in overtime. So good job.
Yeah, we're at a point where, and I'm sure you guys can identify, where it's not so much what the other team does, it's what we're doing, right? Like we're struggling to be able to execute all of our plays, all of our points, and all of our situations. It's not we're not like, oh, what's the other team doing? What's their player, whatever. It's like, hey, guys, this is what we're doing. This is what we're focusing on, like, and really trying to execute that. And we're where we couldn't have done it 2 seasons ago. And last season we could do it for 1 or 2 points. Now we're able to do it for 3 or 4 points. And we can do it for 6 points. We'll be doing better on Sunday.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, because it really does. Rich, you brought up 2 really good points. And
Yes.
Dan, you as well with the analytics, right? Because we talk about, and when I say we, Mike likes to say, losing is lessons, and he's real flowery with all this stuff. And I'm on the other side.
I feel
attacked. It's bullshit. Like, losing is losing. Right? Losing is losing. And you can go back and look, like Dan, did. You can go back and look at, like, hey, we had these 2 opportunities to win these matches, and you guys threw them away. Like you did. But on the flip side of that, Rich, as you mentioned, like, things change as the event evolves. As you get deeper into the event, things change, not just in the way that the field is being played, but emotionally things change. Tempo changes.
100%.
Nerves
Tempo and
change.
paintball is more than any other sport, I think.
For sure, right? And so as you get deep over and over and over again, you have to have all of those experiences so that you can file them all away and go back and touch them later when you're back in those same situations.
Yeah.
And so you guys are
learn from them
right there.
Hopefully we learn from them.
Maybe. But you still lost, by the way, Mike.
100%. You still lose.
Yeah.
Lost.
Yeah.
If you take a loss and you learn your lesson, then hopefully you don't have to make the same mistake or take the same loss again. You've already learned it.
Right. See, we're saying the same thing.
Yeah. I'm halfway between you 2 guys. I'm like half hippie and half hardcore. some things I'm like down the line on, and some things I'm like, yeah, I could go either way.
Yeah.
Well, so you guys are one of the few kind of 2-man operations from a coaching perspective in paintball right now. So really just you guys and Houston Heat are the only groups that really have 2 full-time coaches who are there, practice, everything. And, I've experienced kind of both you and Houston Heat's practice. Mm-hmm. How do you guys divide up whose roles and responsibilities are going to be what? And then how do you make sure you kind of stay out of each other's way? Or do you still kind of work together where you're not in sort of an autonomous thing where you really are a team?
I think, you'd have to see and get Dan's opinion, but I think we work really well together. Danny's a really detailed, focused, oriented guy. I'm a little bit more kind of a loose, big picture guy. We talk about what we're trying to accomplish before practice. I kind of work with the guys individually as they're coming off the field to kind of like talk to them about what we're kind of accomplish. And Dan's on the field with them often, kind of really fine tuning their motor skills, like what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, what their timing is like, instant feedback after the points. And so it works out really well. And then when I get kind of mad at him and I don't want to talk to him anymore, Dan takes over. And then when Dan gets kind of mad, doesn't want to talk to me anymore, I take over. So we kind of balance each other out.
I'm more of the pen to paper guy for sure. And I'm definitely behind the box on the break and getting just shot up back there, which Houston Heat did a really good job of shooting back at back center because
it's like they don't like Asians.
Racist Houston.
I know, that's what I said. I said, he's such a nice guy. Why do you guys keep shooting him?
Yeah, but and so a lot of what I'll do is write down kind of their breakouts, our breakouts, and just to see what we're accomplishing, if we're accomplishing some of the goals, some of the hitting our targets and whatnot. We spent a lot of time drilling, especially on that Friday before we even play points, because I believe you guys were playing points on Friday and we're just like, no, we're going to go drill.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of one of the things I want to talk about as well. So you mentioned you're writing these things down. Is that the stat sheet that you sent me?
Yes.
Okay.
That sheet is specifically for layout weekends.
Yeah, so you bring in this thing, and it's really small.
Yeah.
So I'm going to see if we can blow this up a little bit, make it a little bit easier for people on the YouTube to see it. And if you're listening on the podcast, I will post this on our social media so you guys have access to it. Dan was nice enough to share this with us. So if you get it, make sure that you, if you make changes, make sure you send it to Dan.
Only if they're
Well, I
good.
mean, this is like the 5th and 6th iteration of this sheet, and like 4 of them are completely different. And the big caveat that that I say with these sheets are like kind of what you guys have been saying in the past coaches shows is that, or even Skinny Kevin was saying, like, we can all have the same sheets, but what we value in our data, you guys got to personalize it and make it your own.
Sure.
And
Excellent.
so almost every different layout, whether it's a common culmination of Rich and I having a conversation and going, we really value these data sets, I will change the sheet based on what we're trying to really accomplish. And sometimes it's layout dependent. So there are a bunch of different sheets that I go to. But this is my most basic sheet. So we usually play in 3-point sets, like if we're practicing Dynasty and whatnot. And I like doing those. I just want to know from Dorito 1 through 5, God and Snake, if anybody tries to go there, in which I'll put like, I'll mark that they went there, and then whether or not we were able to shoot that, just so that I can maybe get a bunch of data points on how we're shooting on the break. Is something shootable? And I'm standing right behind them to see if it's like, is it bad mechanics, or was that shot kind of on and they were just really fast and able to flash, and it's just not a shootable shot unless like it's a slower player or something like that. I'll track the wins and losses. I'll track also who we lost on the break, and then to the right of that I would have like kind of comments on what kind of play we just ran, and then well, to the right of that in the open space in between the two. So if you go right, no,
okay,
that's to the right,
in the white area.
that in the white area,
in this void.
Yeah, in the void. And it's mainly so I used to have the spreadsheet go all the way across, and it would just get way too messy with the amount of comments that I would have point to point. So I just keep that open now.
Yep.
And then which wins, losses, who we played on the left side. And then all the way at the bottom would be, as the day would progress, it would be different combinations of players. So ahead of time, after the Friday practice, we would kind of know, and I would write in by hand what kind of lines I kind of want to see. And sometimes the lines are just complete trash, so I'll throw that out.
Yeah.
But if it's something,
those are my favorites.
Yeah. And sometimes if it's worth keeping, like it says 1-1, I would make a minor adjustment on maybe a player's placement or where they're going to go on the field. And then also with the line numbers, every point that we play, I associate a line with the point that we played, and then win-loss.
So like, for example, from down here, whatever your line number is, you put that out here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
So Dan, would this be more like a practice sheet, or would you actually use a version of this at the event?
Oh no, I use Skinny Kevin's, a variation of Skinny Kevin's scouting sheet. I came from, for scouting, I think he talked about it during his podcast, but we were basically at an MXL at the end of the event, and I was just talking about how I used to scout with my cousin when he was coaching Excessive back in like 2005, and we talked about different scouting methods, and then he showed me his method. I'm like, oh, this is an updated version of how I used to do it back in 2005, 2006. So he allowed me to adopt that method, and I've been using that one since, because for me, I can just look at it and know exactly how a game is a game flow is going, and coaching adjustments, I guess.
So that's excellent. So this practice sheet that we just looked at, this is creating those theories, or this is testing those theories to make them law as we head into the event.
Yes. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yep.
And what I just took from all of that is you've watched the show.
Yeah. I usually put it on when I go to the gym. listen to
Nice.
it. See
That's what
what
I do
everyone
too
else
when
is
I get on
doing.
the
I was
bike.
waiting for you to say I put it on when I want to go to sleep.
I just want to see what everyone else is doing.
Nice.
Yeah. So when you guys are preparing for an event, one of the things I saw you guys do that I think is really important and is you didn't start. I'd like that you didn't start off and run out there and play points. Usually that's our process. Like on Thursday, we were there Thursday. So we did drills all afternoon on Thursday and then started playing points on Friday. You guys did all your drills on Friday and then started playing points on Saturday. And the other thing you guys did, and hopefully you don't mind me sharing this, is I like that you guys kind of took it a little bit old school and split the field in half and really were building up kind of those two-man operations. Was that something you guys, have you always done that, or was that new for this year?
Well, that was new for this year. Basically, we kind of a carry on from last season, but going to the one layout weekend, just really having to figure out the field in a short amount of time. We tried to come up with a set of drills that most efficiently allowed us to kind of discover everything you could discover without wasting any time, without any, like, hey, you lost two guys in the break. It was kind of a blown point, or this guy cheated or whatever. So we start off with a two-man ops, just like you said, and try to work through all the different variations that we can figure out, so that when we're starting to play points, we're actually playing it from a perspective where we know the field because we played all the spots.
Yeah.
So
Great.
this two-man ops, that's like a two-man D side, and then you would break it down to, and you would basically create just a half field snake side or D side. With
Yeah, we go
two-man
2 on
operation?
2, then we go 3 on 3. Sometimes we'll go 4 on 4 and use like 3/4 of the field, depending on what the layout is. And that gives us a good kind of feel for the layout. Then we'll do breakout specific stuff, like where can we get away with, what can't we get away with, and just kind of build from there.
That was my next question, if it was layout dependent or if you just stuck with the 2-3. One of the things we try to do and we look at is where do we think those major gunfights are going to happen? Where's going to be that plug, and how can we unplug it?
Yeah, we try to figure out like the 3 or 4 or 5 key bunkers on the field that you really want to spend the most time in, whether you're winning or losing the points. Also, the bunkers you kind of don't want to spend any time in. We try to do as much as we can for figuring out for the guys, just to give them as much information before they start playing the game. And then and we adjust it as we go through. But usually we do a pretty good job on Friday of figuring out all the key spots in the field, what we kind of want to accomplish, what we kind of want to stop the other teams from doing. And then we practice on kind of honing that in or trying to execute that on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I would like to say that I think it's very cool that you guys are doing your show. I also think it's very cool that it seems like coaching is kind of like on the hot plate, or kind of like people are like, oh, hey, it's important to have a good coach on your team. Like, I feel like for the last 10 years, no one's really focused on that. And I get calls every year at the end of every season from owners and from like, hey, man, I need a new snake guy. I need a new Dorito guy. And it's never like, hey, I need a coach. Like, I want to build a program. Where should I start with? Like, oh, I should start with a guy that can build the culture, so that when I bring in these talented players, they can kind of fit into the culture and we'll have a successful unit. And so I think it's great that you guys have kind of brought to the forefront that, coaching is pretty cool, and it's a kind of integral part of a successful team.
Yeah, I think it's kind of nice that it's not the player that, used to be like 15th man on the roster with a clipboard was the coach.
Yeah. It's the season of the coach.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, one of the big things that, Rich, and you thank you, but we saw this kind of void in information and help for where coaches can go get information. But then also, players can get a ton from the information that we're sharing. When their coach asks them to do something that maybe they think is silly, well, if they've heard it here, it's probably not silly, right? Like, we have thus far, the coaches we've had on the show are all the top, right? Like the best of the best. So at least as it relates to the way the performance of their team. So, we think, and we know, right, because we've been around long enough, that you've seen the evolution of this game occur, where when in 2003 to 2006, there were like 5 teams that had coaches. And now, if you don't have a coach, and a good coach, you're at a significant disadvantage. Significant.
I agree 1,000%. And I think building a top professional paintball team, coaching a professional paintball is like one of the hardest things to do in the world. So when I see like the guys who don't have any experience kind of doing it in the divisional, I was like, I just don't understand. I'm like, how do you guys do it? Like, I don't understand like what they're like. I'm not very bright. Like you three, all smart guys. I just have a ton of experience in paintball, so I can kind of, wiggle my way through it. But man, trying to coach a team without like having an experience or being super smart like you guys, it's got to be just a monumental feat.
Yeah, and no data. Right.
Yeah.
No place to find information, no place
stats,
to get support.
Yeah. And everything we do is hearsay, right? Like that guy's a great player. Well, what does that mean? Like, does that mean he's a good one-on-one player? Is he a good team player? Is he a good snake guy? Is he a good Dorito guy? Can shoot on the break? Like, what's a good player, right?
Right.
So, or you just like his headgear.
Yeah.
You really just like his headgear and the way he walks and holds his.
He's so event. Yeah, you watched an event where he had a great event, right? You didn't watch the other 16 events where he got penalties and just was horrible, right? And you don't have that picture in your mind because you didn't see it. You're like, oh, this guy's amazing. And then I watch him, and I'm like, that guy does not seem amazing to me.
It's funny you mentioned that. Ryan and I actually, that was one of the discussions we were having prior to creating the show. Ryan and I would sit there and talk about how there was such a void here, that there was no one teaching coaches how to be coaches, right?
100%.
Who was writing a book on it? Who's doing all this? Who's creating the next generation? And one of the things we talked about
is because it's so hard, right? Like it's
right. And one of the things we talked about was it really is. It's overlooked, and it can't be. You can't just hand a clipboard to somebody and say, "Here, coach." There has to be some form of reasoning and logic behind the choice. Now, one of the things we talked about, to your point, you had said, "Well, that guy's a great player," and you're like, "Well, I don't see him as a great player." Oh, did you see that one point? Yeah. Did you watch the other 6? But the point being that we were talking about, Ryan, I've been talking about statistics. I love statistical analysis. I do a lot of math in the pits. And I think if you were to really go back and really bring statistics back into paintball, you would see a changing of the guard, perhaps based off certain numbers. And I think you make an excellent point. What makes that guy a great player? I would argue, is he talented out there, and is he down for the team?
Yeah, for me, number one is culture, right? Like the gap in skills between the top guy and the bottom guy isn't that big, but the gap in the mentality and the culture is huge, right? Like you have to have that winning culture. You have to have that winning mentality, and then as a coach, we can bring those skills out or figure out how to use his skills within our other sets of guys, right?
Right. Yep. There's 2 things to look at, right? There's their talent, and then there's their mindset. And I saw someone put it together perfectly. They said, very few of us coaches will ever coach, right, an A mindset and an A talent. Yeah, right. 100%. They've got A's in both. Yeah. You're going to run into a lot of A talents, but B mindsets. Those are the guys who are going to go on. They're going to have a couple of strings here. They're the guys that you were talking about, Rich. Hey, that guy's a great player. Really? I don't see him being that great of a player. Then there's those that have the B in the talent, but have an A in mindset. And they're eventually going to pass those guys that are A, B talent and mindset. And they're going to be, they're your real winners. They're the hard workers. They're the guys who know where they are.
Those are the guys that invest your time in, right?
Yeah. Bingo. Those are the ones you invest in.
And that's a hard thing to do as coaches, right? As we're going through our seasons and our careers, and you're working with players, like guys go through when they're playing well, when they're not playing well, when they're hurt, when they're injured or whatever, and spending enough energy with all your guys and not just your better guys or your worst guys, right? Because you can kind of do both, right? You can focus on the guys who are doing well, or you can focus on the guys who aren't doing well. We're trying to get that energy to all the guys. So it's definitely a challenge.
Right. And the guys who are already talented should be assisting the coach on bringing those other guys up.
Hopefully, right?
That's got to be part of it. That, again, culture.
And a successful culture,
Like individual accountability has been massive this year. But on top of that, it's a lot of the team members this year have been accountable for, or keeping everyone else super accountable for their own actions as well. Where we would normally have like maybe a blow up, there would be players intervening and being like, hey, just listen to the coaches and just do what's being said. And then we move on rather than just have a big blow up or whatnot. So accountability has been like massive, especially in changing the culture this year.
Accountability
it
is
certainly
huge for a
works.
successful program. Yeah.
Yeah, and it certainly worked. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, right? Like you guys you're right there.
Yeah, we're very, very close.
Yeah,
But the message to the guys has to be, if we continue to do what we did last season, we're going to continue to just be very close, right? We've got to push harder than we did last season so that we can kind of break that milestone and get into our first match for first and second and hopefully win it. But if not, then next time we get there, hopefully win that and then, build from there.
Yeah. Seventh season for Xtreme. So, now you've got those veterans that understand all that. The accountability's there, the drive's there, the want. You guys have tasted it, and once you've tasted it a little bit, man, it gets addictive.
Yeah. Once you start to believe, and once you think you belong there, and you start playing like you think you belong there, then things start to change.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Rich, it's such a benefit to have a guy like you around a group like that because it just takes one.
Yes.
Because once you get the first one, you never want anything else. Once you win an event, nothing else is satisfactory.
Yeah, and God help the rest of the league when New York Xtreme wins their first tournament, because man, those boys are going to go on a roll. When those guys get as much confidence in themselves as Dan and I have in them, they could easily go on a few event rolls. But as easily as they lost by 1 point at all those events last season, they could easily go on a roll and win by one event, 1 point all the next season.
Absolutely.
Once they get that first W.
You can go back and pick out, hey, this is the one mistake.
Yep.
This is the one mistake, right?
And the beautiful thing about winning is then you don't have any more excuses, right? Like you've proven that you can do it. Now you've just got to go out and do it again, right? You have to have the confidence in yourself. You have to have the execution, but you can do it. There's no question. It's the only thing stopping you is the other team.
Yeah, the big change, the big takeaway from Orlando was being able to make it to semis, and then just seeing the multiple conversations we've had for the weeks after, we could do this. This isn't too bad. Like we can be right there. And then all the players started just having that confidence. Before it's we were bottom 5 or whatnot for all last season, but just to have that confidence, and they just believed in each other and then just started to work really hard for it.
Yeah. So with that being said, what do we expect for the offseason? Any changes being made?
Yeah, Dan, any changes being made?
Oh, changes I want to made or actually going to get made?
We just talked to Bobo, and shout out to Bo Milo, the owner of the team. We just talked to him today. He's still working on talking to some of our guys and talking to some other guys that approached us. I'm sure like you guys, we had a lot of players who are in that position where they're really good players, but they're in that 7th or 8th spot on the team. The team's running mostly one line of guys. So although they're very talented, they're not getting the spins they think they deserve, and they'd like to go somewhere else. So I'm sure you guys are getting those calls. We've gotten a lot of those calls, but Bo does all that, takes care of all that for us. So we're just kind of waiting to hear from him. By the end of the week, we should have all that stuff worked out. But none of our guys are going anywhere.
Yeah. I get phone calls from players, and then they find out that we're broke, and they're like, oh, and then they hang up.
Oh, damn. We had the same
Pay your own way.
Hey, would you tell Pat Kraft to stop calling me? The dude has called me 8 times.
Would you just hurry up and pay him, for God's sakes?
I'm just kidding, Pat.
So you can leave. Just kidding.
No, he's a good one.
Yeah,
He is.
So what are the expectations for 2024?
Right. So my expectations are for us to just continually improve as a team, right? I don't focus on the stuff that we can't control, right? We talked about executing earlier. We've got to practice in early January, mid-January, and we're going to go out there and work on the 3 or 4 things that Dan and I and Bo kind of think we're the worst at. We're going to work on them as much as we can and try to make as much progress in that area on one weekend as we can, as we kind of solidify the culture that we want for the season. And then we're just going to try to improve every event, every practice. And if we have a hiccup, if we mess up somewhere, we're going to go back, reevaluate the mistakes that we made. If not, if we continue to improve, we're eventually going to win a tournament.
Perfect. I want a number. I want you to tell me, when do you think, because I know this is the goal, when do you believe you guys will win an event?
I want to win by the 3rd event of next season.
3rd event. That's really, I like definitive pointed statements. Yeah. So third event is what your expectation. And I think that is a very reasonable goal, right?
Yeah. I mean,
I think that's very reasonable.
A lot of stuff is outside of our control at the events. But if we're executing everything the way the pit guys are doing their job, the coaches are doing their job, the players are doing their job, then I feel like we should put ourselves in a position where we should, be playing for first and second by the third event.
Yeah.
And if not, that gives us a position to where, hey, if we got to get rid of some people, bring some new people in, or do whatever we need to do before the end of the season, so be it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a goal setter. I believe in setting goals.
Yeah.
And I think it's an admirable goal. Are there any other goals besides, obviously that's the coup de grace there. We want to be in the hunt for the first and second by third event. Is there any other goals, maybe off the field, not necessarily on the field? Are there any other goals
off the field goals
setting?
Some of the off the field goals I have, and Dan, you can jump in, is I'd like to bring some more money into the team from the outside, so that if we do end up becoming successful, we can keep our players, right? Like every team has a budget. We're pushing right at the top end of our budget.
Every team does not have a budget.
No, every team does have a budget, right? There's whether it's in the positive or in the negative, there's a budget, right?
Valid. The ledger is some negative.
Yeah. So we and what we would like to do is just protect the guys that we have, right? Because that's always a problem, right? As you become more successful and as a coach, you put more time and energy into a player, you kind of help him or her develop past the point where they're at, get some notoriety, get some fame, and then somebody with more money comes in and poaches them from you. That's a tough situation. It's tough for two reasons, because you lose that player, but also because the key to a successful team is keeping bodies together, right? Keeping the guys together long enough that they can kind of figure out how to play together and how the strengths and the weaknesses work together.
And like I was kind of saying before about like the stages of team development, we're really only in like a year and a half of this iteration of this team. Corey Hall came in after the Latin Saints situation last year. I came in at the beginning of last year. I would like to see what this team can keep together and be at like the 3-year mark where we're firing on all cylinders, or ideally firing on all cylinders. So tying back to what Rich was saying, we need that funding to maybe keep some of our players and see what this iteration of this NYX team can do. So.
Yeah, I think there's a bright future ahead for sure, if that continuity stays. Right. If you can keep the guys together and they continue to build on that faith that they've already begun to experience, I think you guys are in a spot that you're going to be, and already are, pretty dangerous. But I think you're going to be very dangerous.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
I concur 100%.
We are trying really, really hard. We all have a common goal, right? We all want to be the absolute best that we can be in our positions, and to get to help each other out and to support each other. It's one of the most positive teams I've been on. There's not no one blames the other guys. No one yells at the other guys. There's no like finger pointing. They're not always able to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, right? They can't always execute what we're trying to execute, but as a team, they're really coming together as a team. And that makes me really proud. Yeah. Gives us some hope.
Well, one other thing I noticed was, and it's small, but it's those little things that add up. But your pick control was 10 times different than it was in 22. Everybody's got that much. They understand it. They understand what needs to happen.
We're trying to improve.
And right. 0.001% improvement, still improvement, right?
100%. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to improve every aspect of the game. People don't understand, like, you have to have really good paintball players. You have to have a really good coach. You have to have a really good pit crew, right? Like, you have to have all these things, and all these guys have to be doing their jobs at the highest level, because you're competing against another group of guys that are doing the exact same thing and trying to beat you. So it's like, you can't just go out there and half-ass the pit. You can't go half-ass your paint management. You can't miss a practice. You can't, not watch your film if you're the coach. Like, there's all these things that you have to do, and then it's still super hard, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff going on out there, man.
Yeah, they're doing the exact same thing on the other end. Sorry.
Yeah. And there's no, you're good, Dan. There's so much about our sport that is like NASCAR, right? Where 100%. You can have this amazing driver, but if the car's not set up perfectly, the pit guys don't do exactly what they're supposed to do and put all the lugs in as fast as. I mean, there's just so many pieces that go into the way a paintball event works, and then still all of that can be perfect, and you get one bad call. or one bounce.
It's
or
not even that. It's you could spend a ton of money, bring in like 5 of the best paintball players in the world, and not even make Sunday, right? Because of all the crazy things that go on, right? I mean, it's people think, oh, if I just had the money, oh, if I just had the players, oh, if I just had this paint sponsor, whatever. Man, it takes all that and more. Like to compete at the highest level and to stay at the highest level is super, super challenging.
Yeah, for sure.
If I just had the money.
Yeah, money does help. Money 100% helps, but it doesn't it doesn't do everything, right?
You know, something else that might help NYX is maybe getting to the New Orleans area for a practice or something. That
man, we want to practice you guys really bad because
we want to practice you guys bad too.
You're like our opposite, right? Like you guys are super controlled, super focused, super disciplined. Our guys are just wiling out at all times. So I feel like we can learn a lot.
I saw a lot of discipline out of it. I saw a lot of discipline out of NYX.
That's complacency. That's completely different. Yeah, you're misinterpreting that for sure.
They were just really sleepy.
They were super sleepy.
I mean, how far is it a drive from Louisiana to St. Louis?
You're going to say St. Louis, aren't you?
Yeah.
We've already, Rich and I've had this conversation. Any travel is difficult for the Canes, but we're working on that. Very much like you.
It's challenging for us too. You know how far away that is for us? It's a long ways.
I know, but very much like you, Rich.
Planes,
one of the things
trains,
we're working on is creating that revenue stream, right? So that we can keep our players, so that we can go and have practices with top level teams like Diesel and NYX.
100%. Like it's like you spend so much money that if you spend just a little bit more, you give yourself a position where you have a better advantage. And if you don't do that, then you're at a disadvantage.
Well, we've proven that our process can get us so far, but that's not going to be good enough for next season. It's just not.
Well, and it's a learning experience. Like I think you guys hurt yourself with your practice and not playing the 7-3 event, right? Like I think if you had your choice to do that again, you probably would have practiced with some other teams and you probably would have played the 7-3 event. And your World Cup could have been completely different. But like we don't know until we do these things, right? There's not, like you said, there's no handbook. There's no like, hey, if you want to build a championship team, you do A, B, and C. It's like, this is my experience. These are my opportunities. Try to, shake that up and do the best I can.
Yeah. And GG being our big sponsor this year, we're going to be there a majority of the time this year.
Yeah, I'm actually building a house.
Yeah, in
St. Louis,
in Innsbruck.
It's
amazing.
At the
you're
paintball
building
field,
a house in this economy. It doesn't sound like NYX has got a budget problem.
This is why they have a budget problem, because Danny.
Because they're paying for your house.
So GG Paintball is like pretty amazing field, but 10 minutes away there's a resort called Innsbruck Resort where there's a bunch of houses and lakes and stuff, and it's like a 10,000 acre resort, and it's 10 minutes from the field, so we just stay there, go out there, and it's great.
Like deer running around. It's beautiful.
Deer, yeah. It's a lot of trails. Golf course, yeah. We go kayaking and stuff while we're there.
Sounds like we're gonna have to go to GG
with a bunch of deer running around.
Yeah, no. If you guys come, we'll talk to Dustin about getting you guys one of those cabins. It's great. We'll all hang out, barbecue. It's a blast, man.
Yeah,
all right, brother.
Every night. And it really helps with like the team bonding stuff. Yeah. So.
All right, we'll come at some point.
Yeah, giddy up. Yeah, that'd be great. That's 3 great teams right there.
Yeah. I think we had an invite to every team this year, or to Diesel
for like Dynasty in the Mix or something. We'll be set.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to share before we jump off?
No, thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
To watch when I get on the assault bike. Danny, thank you for all you do. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Mike and Ryan, great luck this season. I can't wait to see what you guys do with the teams and with the show. Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate you being here. Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
Awesome. Have a good one.
Wow.
We could have probably kept going for another several hours.
For sure. Yeah, like all the other guys that we have on the show, but like, especially Rich. Like I could sit here and talk to Rich for hours.
Oh, no doubt.
Hours. So
it's funny. It's funny how he points to us and he says, "You 3 guys," but he's dropping knowledge the entire show,
Right.
as if, and here's the, as if spirit, that's the thing though, right? I think if we're going to take it to its literal conclusion, Rich has that experience. He's gotten all that experience, which has made him an intelligent man. So, there's something to be said for that. So.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at dynamic teams that have been built over the years, I mean, Rich has been a part of and built some of the best. Right. So, Dan, who I got to know pretty well this year, we had a couple of practices with NYX, and then he was over in Europe coaching a team in Drew, and we got to spend some time together. He's really intelligent. He's very driven, smart with data, really understands how to use it correctly. So glad he was able to share a practice sheet with us, because I think that'll be important for coaches who are looking for new ways to track how their practice goes. So yeah, it was a good one.
And I think he's got the perfect demeanor for that culture, right? That dynamic of the NYX guys. He's got that even keel. And when you've got a leader like that, and that's something I try to do, right? I try to bring that presence of even keelness in the pit. And hey, everyone calm down, we're good, right? And you keep those powerful alphas, right, in check, and then you let them loose in the net. So
he gets after him every now and again. Like at practice, he gets loud and he lets them know, and he's verbal. So
he's not flowery like me, right?
Yeah, he doesn't paint it up. He doesn't paint it up. He's pretty direct about it. So but both of those guys, like at practice, kind of watching how they sort of pass the ball back and forth with the information and what they're trying to get and how they communicate that to the group it's really impressive. It's rare, I think, that you can get two personalities to work, especially in our game that's full of egos, right?
Oh, and 100%.
Yeah, and they do it really well. They kind of both, I think, understand where the other one, like kind of the yin and yang, where the other one sort of takes over, and when it's time for them to step away and let that person, talk about, like Rich stepping away, let Dan talk about the analytics. I'm going to talk about the emotional stuff and the things we need to be aware of that maybe are about to happen as we navigate through an event. So it's really neat to see how their dynamic works, right? And obviously it works.
Right. And it's so obvious that when they do overlap, right, when they are in that pit together, when they're in that position together, they've got each other's back. They're on the same page. So they're delivering the same message. It's obvious. And one thing that I've really enjoyed, because, obviously people know Rich from the webcast and other things. And Rich is a funny guy. I've had some of the most fun, intellectual, and serious conversation with Rich Telford after events. I had a great one with him at World Cup. He put things into perspective for me. So I greatly appreciate his insight and mentorship. So.
All right. Well, next week, we got a good one. We're going to have Marcelo Magat, who's going to come on and talk about what it's like to be a player and a coach who coaches two divisional teams, one in the WCPPL and then one in the NXL. And then also USA Paintball. We're going to talk about combine opportunities for players to be able to get involved. They can even go watch. It's a great way to see a tryout. So Anthony Vitale is going to come on and talk about how players can participate in USA Paintball, how they can go be a part of the combine. What's great about the combine too is it's not just about making USA Paintball. Lots of players get picked up from there for high-level divisional teams and even professional teams. So next week's going to be a really good one. Mike, have a great evening. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, brother. Be safe.
You know what that is? Discipline. Selfish.
No joke. We're legitimate.
Fucking do this? Then do it. Do it 100%, because I'm trying to.
We recognize that we are limitless.
Got to be a champion, become a champion, right? Winning is a habit because we create habits that lead to good execution and success.